Hi there. I'm Caroline Parker, a 34-year-old living in a charming house with a white roof nestled in a peaceful suburban neighborhood of Austin, Texas. From the outside, it might look like I'm living the dream, complete with a rose garden that blooms all year, a wonderful husband, and a full-time role as a homemaker. For over a decade, I've poured my heart into every nook and cranny of this home. My husband, Thomas Parker, is 38 and works as a sales director for a big pharmaceutical company. He's tall, with neatly styled brown hair and a smile that can easily win over anyone he meets. In the early days of our marriage, I felt incredibly lucky. Thomas was charming, ambitious, and had a knack for making friends wherever he went. Our friends would often tease me, saying, "Caroline, you've really hit the jackpot. Hold on to him." Back then, I'd just smile, convinced that our love could weather any storm. After nearly 2 years of dating, we fell in love and tied the knot. I envisioned a perfect home filled with the laughter of children in the mornings. But as time went on, the anxious waits in clinic rooms, the cold test results, and the disappointments of failed treatments slowly chipped away at that hope. I spent 4 long years exploring every fertility treatment imaginable, from Eastern to Western medicine, until I finally had to accept what the last doctor told me: it's all in the hands of fate. At first, Thomas was my rock. He held my hand and reassured me, saying, "As long as I have you, I feel complete." But I can still picture those moments when he would silently watch the neighbor's child playing in the yard, his eyes reflecting a sadness he never voiced. Those moments felt like quiet scratches on my heart. Everything shifted dramatically after my parents passed away. My father suffered a stroke, and just 3 months later, my mother left us after a long illness. That loss left me feeling empty, but it also thrust me into the role of the sole heir to my parents' legacy. It all started with a small but sturdy real estate company, along with a few unexpected savings from some apartments. That money allowed Thomas and me to upgrade our lifestyle significantly. We settled into our current home, splurged on a new SUV, and made it a point to vacation at least twice a year in luxurious spots like Florida or California. But then I began to notice a shift in Thomas's gaze, not so much directed at me, but rather at everything around us. That's when I first felt a vague sense of unease that I couldn't quite put my finger on. To everyone else, we were still the perfect couple. The glamorous check-in photos, the fancy wine parties, the envious comments whenever I shared something on social media. It all felt like a facade hiding the nights I spent awake, grappling with my own loneliness. I often wondered if this newfound material wealth was quietly eroding the solid bond we once had, but I'd quickly dismiss those thoughts, convincing myself I was just being overly sensitive. Thomas still seemed like the ideal partner in our friends' eyes, still showering me with sweet words in public. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of growing distance in his gestures. He would smile, but his eyes lacked the warm spark they used to have. Inside this fully furnished house, I sometimes felt like a stranger in my own life. I never imagined that the fortune I thought was a blessing would pull me into an emotional undercurrent I never anticipated. In the months following our move, I noticed even more changes in Thomas. He didn't seem excited to come home anymore. The cozy dinners that used to be our cherished routine were replaced by short text messages. "I'm busy with work. Don't wait for me for dinner." At first, I tried to convince myself it was just a rough patch at work. But as time went on, his excuses became so repetitive that they felt empty, and I couldn't help but feel my heart tighten with a growing sense of dread. These days, Thomas was coming home late almost every night. Many evenings, it wasn't until the clock hit 10 p.m. that Thomas would finally walk through the door, looking worn out, yet there was this strange sparkle of excitement in his eyes. On some nights, when I gently asked, "Is everything okay at work?" he'd offer a faint smile and say, "Just a lot of new projects. Don't worry." But the indifference in his voice only made my anxiety grow. What really bothered me was his phone. He no longer left it on the table like he used to. It was always glued to him. Whenever a call came in, he'd quickly step out onto the balcony or down to the garage, avoiding my gaze. Sometimes, I could barely hear him talking, his voice barely above a whisper. He used to share everything with me, work calls, casual chats with colleagues. Once, when I unexpectedly stepped out onto the balcony, he abruptly ended the call and forced a calm expression. "That was a client. Big contract tomorrow," he said. But I distinctly heard a woman's voice on the other end, soft laughter that didn't sound like any client he'd ever mentioned. Thomas also stopped showing me his monthly credit card statements, which he used to do without hesitation. When I asked, "Can you give them to me so I can help manage our spending?" he quickly shot back, "I'll handle it myself. Don't want to mix it up with the company card." Too much hassle. The flicker of irritation on his face stunned me. It was the first time in our marriage that he seemed annoyed by my questions about finances, something we had always agreed would be completely open. I started to feel lost in my own home. Those long evenings spent alone in the living room, watching car lights pass by, made me wonder, is Thomas still the man who promised to stand by me for life? I kept telling myself to trust him, to give him time. But night after night, the doubt inside me grew like a dark cloud I couldn't shake off. One weekend evening, Thomas unexpectedly took me to a company party, an event he hadn't mentioned as often as he used to. The atmosphere was filled with golden lights and soft music, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Thomas laughed and chatted with everyone as if nothing was amiss. I tried to fit in, convincing myself to shake off my doubts. But then, while I was standing alone by the wine bar, I accidentally caught a snippet of a conversation between Thomas and a colleague. Thomas leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The project in San Antonio is almost wrapped up. After that, I'll have more freedom." The colleague chuckled softly. "You're really discreet about it. Did you leave any trace?" Thomas took a sip of his wine, and I noticed a flicker in his eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. Was it worry or excitement? "Don't worry, everything is under control." San Antonio? That was a place I had never heard him mention before. It was over 100 miles from Austin, not exactly his usual territory. My heart raced, and I struggled to suppress the wave of anxiety rising within me. I felt frozen in place. That night, as we drove home, Thomas held my hand, still the gentle husband everyone admired. But the warmth I once felt was gone, and I realized the doubts in my heart couldn't be ignored any longer. I thought I was composed enough to handle the changes in Thomas, but then a phone call from my best friend Allison reignited the flames of suspicion I had been trying so hard to douse these past few days. Allison, my friend since college, now worked at a media company in Houston. Just as I set my teacup down on the table that day, the phone rang. Her voice came through, a bit hesitant but filled with concern. "Caroline, I need to tell you something. Last week, I was on a business trip in San Antonio. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I saw Thomas." I froze, gripping the phone tightly. "What did you say?" I kept telling myself it couldn't be true, but it was definitely him. He was sitting in a small cafe near the bus station with a younger blonde woman. They looked pretty cozy. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it just didn't feel right at all. My throat tightened, and my heartbeat raced as if it might burst from my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure, and thanked Allison for sharing that with me. Later that night, I found myself by the window, gazing at the serene night sky while my heart was in turmoil. A flood of questions overwhelmed me. Who was that woman? Why was Thomas keeping this from me? And why did everything seem to align with the signs I had noticed all along? Just 3 days later, Thomas surprised me by coming home earlier than usual. His face was unusually bright as he stepped inside, and before I could utter a word, he said, "I think we need some time for just us. Let's head to New Orleans this weekend." I've already booked a room at a riverside hotel. We can rekindle our connection. What do you think? I was taken aback. For over a year, Thomas had been using work as an excuse to dodge intimate moments like this. His sudden invitation filled me with a mix of joy and apprehension. I tried to hide my discomfort behind a calm facade. "Did you really mean that?" I asked. He wrapped his arms around me, resting his cheek against my hair, his voice warm, yet I felt an unsettling chill. "I love you. That's all you need to remember, Caroline." His gaze was intense, but there was something in it that felt off. The entire night before our trip, I lay awake. When Thomas finally drifted off, I sat quietly in the dim light. On a whim, I opened his briefcase, the one he always kept close. I hadn't intended to invade my husband's privacy, but something inside urged me to uncover the truth. Inside, along with his laptop and notebook, I discovered a thick file folder with a pale blue cover. My hand shook as I pulled it out. It was an Austin Mental Wellness Center medical file. The words on the cover took me by surprise. My heart raced as I flipped through the initial pages. They were filled with complicated medical jargon and messy red-marked charts that I couldn't decipher. But one section stood out. It had my name, Caroline Parker, on it. Preliminary assessment. Symptoms consistent with delusional disorder. MY vision blurred, and I couldn't bring myself to read any further. I carefully folded the file and placed it back just as I found it. Sinking down onto the bedroom floor, tears streamed down my cheeks, but I held back any sound. Suddenly, memories began to flood my mind. Thomas's distant star, those late nights when he came home, the mysterious phone calls, and his earlier words echoing in my head. That's all you need to remember. I love you. I was lost, unsure of what was real and what was a lie. The trip to New Orleans. Was it truly just a getaway to heal, or was it the beginning of something far worse than I could ever imagine? The journey to New Orleans started under the gentle morning sun, but the mood in the car felt unusually heavy. Thomas was driving, his eyes fixed on the road, yet I could sense his tension. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror so often that I finally asked, "Is something wrong? Is someone following us?" He let out a strained laugh without turning to face me. "It's nothing. I guess I'm just tired and a little on edge." "Don't worry." But that laugh did little to ease my worries. Throughout the drive, he took several calls, speaking in hushed tones that I could barely catch, his grip on the steering wheel tightening until his knuckles turned white. I sat beside him in silence, my heart racing with every passing minute, only adding to my unease. Around midday, we pulled over at an old gas station along the road, surrounded by the desolation of Louisiana. A weathered sign swayed in the breeze, reading, "Bayou Stop Gas." Thomas turned off the engine and looked over at me. "Do you want to go in and grab some water or something? I'll fill up the tank, and then we'll hit the road again." I nodded and stepped out while Thomas made his way to the pump. A young guy with sun-kissed skin in a faded blue uniform approached us. His name tag read E. He started pumping gas but kept sneaking glances at me through the window. Meanwhile, Thomas turned his back to check the rear of the car. Ethan moved closer to the passenger side window, pretending to clean it, then quickly slipped a small piece of paper through the gap. I froze. He didn't say a word, just shook his head slightly, his expression serious, then walked away as if nothing had happened. I glanced at Thomas, who was bent over, checking the tires, completely oblivious. My hands were shaking. I opened the note under the cover of the dashboard. It read, "You need to get out of here right now. He's lying to you. Don't ask. Don't hesitate." My heart was pounding so loudly it felt like it was going to burst. A chill ran through me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. Thomas returned, his voice light as a breeze. "Go on in and grab something to drink. I'll finish up here and catch up with you." I clenched the note tightly in my hand and hurried into the convenience store, my mind racing. Who was Ethan? Why did he send me this message? Did he think I was someone else? Or was I really in danger? Inside the store, I pretended to browse for a few bottles of water, my eyes scanning for Ethan. At the end of the aisle leading to the back, there he was, his look saying, "Follow me." I hesitated for a moment, then decided to go after him. Out back, next to a row of trash bins and an old generator, Ethan locked eyes with me, his voice low but clear. "I'm really sorry for startling you, but I just couldn't stand by and do nothing. About 3 weeks ago, I spotted your husband here with a blonde woman. They were acting pretty close. I didn't mean to get involved, but then I overheard their conversation, and it felt like the ground shifted beneath me. I couldn't help but speak up. What were they discussing?" Ethan swallowed hard, glancing nervously toward the front. He referred to her as his real wife. When she asked about you, your husband replied, "Let this trip take care of it. Then everything will be ours." I heard it loud and clear, but it was hard to wrap my head around it. Then this morning, he stopped for gas alone, made a call, and said, "All the hospital admission paperwork is done. She won't have any more chances." I clutched the hem of my shirt to steady my shaking hands. Ethan continued, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I don't know what they're plotting, but it's definitely not good. Don't go back to the car. If you want, I can take you to the nearest police station. They'll help you." I heard footsteps approaching from the front. Thomas's voice rang out, sharper than usual. "Caroline, where are you?" Ethan lowered his voice, urgency in his tone. "You have to make a decision right now. If you go back, you won't get another chance." I took a deep breath, looking into those earnest eyes. All those years of love, all those memories felt like a shattered picture that couldn't be put back together. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "Help me get out of here." Thomas's voice echoed from the front, no longer carrying the gentleness I once knew. I held my breath, my heart racing as if it might burst. Everything clicked into place in my mind. The mysterious calls, the strange medical file, the calculated trip. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the truth. I dashed after Ethan, making my way around the side exit of the gas station. His old blue pickup was waiting. Ethan opened the door, urging me softly, "Hurry, don't look back." I jumped into the truck, hearing Thomas's footsteps pounding behind us. As the truck pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Thomas was sprinting out, his face a mix of fury and panic. Gone was the look of a husband desperately searching for his wife. Instead, it was the expression of a man witnessing his plans unravel. The old truck roared to life, kicking up dust as it sped away from the gas station, leaving Thomas behind. I sat there, trembling next to Ethan. He shot me a reassuring glance, his voice steady. "The police station is only about 30 miles from here. Just hang in there. You're safe now." I could only nod slightly, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. When we finally arrived at the police station in the small town of Bayou Grove, a female officer named Kelly greeted me. I shared everything, the warning note, the medical file, and Thomas's odd behavior. Kelly listened closely, then spoke softly. "At this point, we can't arrest him based on suspicion alone, but we'll file a report right away. I recommend you request an emergency protective order and think about hiring a lawyer or a private investigator to gather more evidence." Ethan took me to a friend's house, an older woman named Doris who lived nearby. Doris welcomed me with a warm hug that I hadn't expected from a stranger. That evening, I called Allison and filled her in on everything. She quickly connected me with a private investigator she trusted, Nathan Brooks, who specialized in marital fraud cases. The next day, Nathan met me at a cozy cafe in Baton Rouge. He was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes but a calm demeanor. I'll start by looking into Thomas Parker's background. I have a feeling there's something off about his identity and life. 3 days later, Nathan called me, his tone serious. Caroline, I need to see you right away. I've uncovered the truth. At his small office, Nathan handed me a thick file. On top was a photo of Thomas standing next to a blonde woman and 2 twin children, about 8 years old, in front of a house in Jackson, Mississippi. He pointed at the picture. Your husband's real name is Thomas Green. He's had another family in Jackson for the past 10 years. Back when we were still newlyweds, it turned out he already had another family. Nathan's voice was serious as he continued. They've been scheming to take over your assets. I got a warrant to look at Thomas's call records. In those recordings, he was chatting with a psychiatrist named Samuel about setting up a fake file for you, planning to have you committed under a false diagnosis just to control your assets. He handed me Thomas's bank statements, showing payments made to Dr. Samuel with a note that read, "Fee for file preparation." My hands shook as I held those documents. Everything suddenly made sense. The man I had loved and trusted for all these years was nothing but a fraud, exploiting my trust to try and take everything from me. Nathan placed his hand gently on the table, his eyes filled with determination. Now's the time to get a good lawyer. I can recommend someone. We'll work together to protect you and bring him to justice. I took a deep breath, my heart heavy but also ignited with a newfound resolve. Even if my past was built on lies, I refused to let him ruin the rest of my life. After meeting with Nathan Brooks, I knew I couldn't wait another day. With every ounce of strength I had left, I picked up the phone and called Allison, asking her to connect me with a strong lawyer who could help me fight this tough legal battle. Without missing a beat, Allison introduced me to Sarah Whitman, a well-respected attorney in Baton Rouge known for winning cases involving marital fraud and asset theft. That very afternoon, I met Sarah at her office, a simple space that radiated determination with thick case files piled on the desk. As I spoke, Sarah listened intently, her eyes lighting up with resolve. Caroline, this file is enough to charge Thomas with bigamy and fraud. The first thing we need to do is request an order to freeze all joint and individual accounts to stop any transactions. With Sarah and Nathan's support, I quickly signed all the necessary papers. Just 2 days later, the court gave the green light to freeze the accounts and real estate that Thomas and I had co-owned. At the same time, Sarah officially filed charges with the authorities in both Louisiana and Mississippi, the 2 states where Thomas had been operating under his fake identity. That's when the storm really started brewing. I bet Thomas never thought I could move so fast and decisively. Just 3 days later, police from both states swooped in, raiding and arresting Thomas at a rental apartment near the Texas border, where he had been hiding after realizing his plans had crumbled. Amanda Green, his real wife, was also taken in for questioning on suspicion of being an accomplice. I can still vividly recall the moment I walked into the courtroom for the first time. My heart raced as I saw Thomas being led in, handcuffed, looking nothing like the confident, polished man who once stood by my side. His face twisted in bitterness when he spotted me sitting there, not the trusting, loving wife I used to be, but the plaintiff ready to fight for justice. The case quickly caught the attention of the local press. Reporters lined up outside the courthouse, flashbulbs popping as I walked in alongside Sarah. But fear was the last thing on my mind. All I could think about was putting an end to this nightmare once and for all. The trial dragged on for more than 3 months, and the evidence Nathan and Sarah had gathered left Thomas with no room to wiggle out of his crimes. Recordings of his shady phone calls, bank statements showing bribes paid to the psychiatrist, forged medical records about me, and photos of Thomas with Amanda, along with their marriage certificate from Jackson. When I heard the words, 3 years in prison as an accomplice, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I held onto Sarah's hand tightly, tears streaming down my face, not from sorrow, but from the relief of knowing I had made the right choice. Thomas didn't even glance my way as they took him away. Maybe he realized that, in the end, the truth always prevails over lies. I made the decision to sell the house filled with so many painful memories. With the money from the sale and what little I had left, I moved to a quaint coastal town near Mobile, Alabama, a serene escape from all the hurt. My new home was simple, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of belonging. Each morning, I would sit on the porch with a steaming cup of coffee, listening to the waves crash against the shore. The sunlight danced on the water, a gentle reminder that I was ready to start fresh, free from fear and confusion. In those early days in Mobile, I embraced a quiet life, taking the time to heal from wounds I had long ignored. Every morning, I would gaze out at the vast blue sea, soaking in the sounds of the waves and the calls of seagulls. One afternoon, while wandering through the town center, I noticed a flyer outside the library for a support group for victims of marital fraud and emotional abuse. It read, "Share and heal together." I found myself standing there for what felt like ages. That night, I lay awake, thinking about women like me who might still be trapped in fear, unable to escape. The next morning, I went to the community center and signed up. For the first time, I stood in front of a group of strangers and shared my story. My voice shook as I recounted the betrayal and the moment I had to choose between blind love and the harsh truth. But with each word I spoke, I felt a little lighter. The bright eyes of the women around me, their knowing nods, and the quiet tears they shed all filled me with strength. I started as a participant and gradually became a supporter. Alongside other members, I helped organize sharing sessions, guided victims in seeking legal assistance, and most importantly, helped them rediscover their self-worth. Every time someone said, "Because of you, I found the courage to leave that hell," my heart swelled with warmth. During those days, I kept in touch with Ethan, the young man who had saved me. He had moved to New Orleans to finish his mechanical engineering degree, and we often exchanged texts and occasional calls. Each message from Ethan carried a sincerity and kindness I had never experienced during my years in a false marriage. One autumn afternoon, I received a message from him, "Caroline, I just graduated. I got my first job at a manufacturing company nearby. My mom wants to invite you to dinner to thank you for trusting me that day. Can you come?" I read that message over and over, smiling without even realizing it. The truth was, it was Ethan and his mother who deserved the thanks for pulling me from the abyss. That evening, I drove to their home, a cozy little house in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of New Orleans. Linda, Ethan's mother, greeted me with a warm smile and a heartfelt hug. Dinner was simple but filled with laughter. We reminisced about the past and talked about the future. Ethan excitedly shared about his new job and his dream of building machines to help the community. With pride in her eyes, Linda spoke about the challenges of raising a child alone and the regret of having watched a loved one be taken advantage of. As I sat there, I felt a peace I hadn't known in ages, surrounded by people who shared no blood ties or common past. I experienced the genuine kindness and sincere hearts I had longed for all these years, free of hidden agendas. As we said our goodbyes, Linda held my hand, her voice thick with emotion. "Caroline, thank you for not turning your back on my son that day. Thanks to you, he's really come a long way." I held her hand gently, speaking from the heart. It was Ethan who pulled me back from the edge. And because of that, I discovered that true family isn't just about blood relations. It's about those who genuinely care for you. That night, as I made my way home, I took a detour to the beach and opened the door to really listen to the waves. The night sky was filled with twinkling stars, and I realized my life was stepping into a brand new chapter. A chapter filled with freedom, strength, and gratitude for the wonderful people who helped me find my way out of the darkness. Reflecting on my journey, I see that what felt like the deepest hurt was actually the start of a meaningful new life. From being a deceived wife, I rediscovered myself, stronger, freer, and more appreciative of what truly matters. I learned that family isn't just those who share your blood, but those who come to you with genuine kindness and sincerity. Now, I'm dedicated to spreading hope, walking alongside those who, like me, once felt lost. What are your thoughts on Caroline's story and her journey of rediscovery? We love to hear from you, so share your feelings below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more uplifting stories about family and life.